We're still in the early days of 2021 and it's great to be here. I'm Linda Akibe and you are welcome to the Gavel. The National Assembly is expected to resume legislative proceedings on the 26th of January and they have serious matters to address on resumption. There's the amendment of the Electoral Act, which the leadership of the National Assembly had promised to pass in the first quarter of 2021. There's also the amendment of the 1999 Constitution, which is before the National Assembly. Now, amending the Constitution is a difficult process which takes time as it involves the input not only of the federal legislature, but also the state assemblies who must vote on each clause up for amendment. It's important that this process be managed efficiently if the Constitution will be amended in the 9th Assembly and passed before the expiration of the Buhari administration. Now, other critical bills before the National Assembly include the Petroleum Industry Bill, which has languished in Parliament for more than 20 years, amendment of the Public Procurement Act, passage of the Sexual Harassment in Tertiary Institutions Bill by the House of Representatives, and also legislative interventions in the management of COVID-19, recession and insecurity. The National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies commissioned a research to measure citizens' preferences and expectations of the federal legislature. We interviewed the Director General of the Institute, Professor Abubakar Sulaiman, to get more details of the study and other issues regarding accountability of the federal legislature.
The essence of the study was to, one, establish a nexus between democracy and the people. We have all this notion that democracy is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. The essential ingredient, this essential organ of democracy in any democratic system is the legislature. The legislature represents the collective will of the people. So if they represent the collective of the people and they are to serve the people and they are elected by the people, we should be seeing resolution, debates, and law being made by the legislature as representing the will of the people, essentially. So if that is the case, therefore, we should be able to know the 9th Assembly or the 9th Assembly members that have been elected, either as senators or as rep members, what are they going there to do? How do we collect, articulate and aggregate opinion, interests of Nigerian people into the parliament in a way that by the time they go into the sitting to settle down for law-making business, Nigerians will see them carrying out those things that are in the interest of their people. So the essential aspect of the study, which we did and we intend to achieve, was to ensure that what comes out of the 9th Assembly, the National Assembly to be precise, both the House and the Senate, represent the true wishes of Nigerian people. So there are a lot of misperception about Nigerian legislature. Yeah. There are a lot of misinformation. People believe, oh, they are not there to do anything, they are just there to collect our money. We need to, on our own as a research institution, under the National Assembly, we need to now carry a study, collect opinion from the various constituency, send it to the inner system, which is the political system, for them to know, yes, these are the priority. These are the national agenda. These are the national goal. These are the various, yearnings, demands from Nigerian people. So we did that, and we submitted the report to the 9th Assembly, to the National Assembly, which I want to believe has formed part of the various resolutions and policy coming out from the National Assembly.
So you said that the National Assembly does not have a very favorable perception in the minds of Nigerians. What is responsible for this?
Simple. You see, unlike the executive and the judiciary that have long years of maturity in terms of 60 years, in existence, the legislature is roughly just 20 years, year old in terms of being uninterrupted. The various military intervention, the various military interregnum did not allow the legislature to exist for a long time as their counterpart does. So the skill, the maturity, the experience you expected from them was not even there in the first instance. A 21 or 20 years old or a baby or a child or a guy is seeing them for the first time. Someone that was born under the military never knew that there existed another organ of government. So, one, that was a factor, a big factor, that affected the perception. So some people, it was very strange. They see that body of people gather in an hallowed chamber to make law. What are they doing? So, to a layman who is just 25 years old in Nigeria, for instance, he's seen them for the first time. So, that is number one. Number two, the legislature, they are the only organ of government that have this mass acceptability in terms of, when you talk of the executive, you have the president, you have the governor. In the state, a governor was elected. He has about 24 members. Commissioners were not elected. At the federal level, the ministers were not elected. It's just the president and the vice president. So it's only the legislature that are mass in number. So when they are mass in number, they are expected to go back to their constituency. They are elected from the various constituencies, senatorial districts, geopolitical zone.
Don't you think that this is because, or part, what is contributing to this is the inability or unwillingness of a National Assembly to even publicize what lawmakers themselves earn? To answer that question once and for all, this is what we earn monthly or yearly.
You see, let me be frank with you. I'm in support of openness and transparency. And I begin to wonder too, what is it so discreet, so confidential, so that's important that we could not even, open up our treasury in terms of letting Nigeria know how much we earn. I was a former minister from the angle of the executive, and I know how much minister preside over in terms of funds. For instance, a minister of works, for instance, going by the budget allocation, is entitled to preside over 300 billion, 400 billion, depending in terms of disbursements. Whereas the entire National Assembly, as we have it today, the entire allocation to them, as we have it today, is not up to 150 billion. So, why Nigeria will cry over what National Assembly allocation is, which is meant for House of Rep members, which is meant for the Senate, which is meant for National Assembly Service Commission, which is meant for 5,000 support staff of National Assembly, which is meant for Public Complaint Commission, which is meant for NABRO. People talk less about what just one minister preside over in terms of disbursement. So, if that is the case, therefore, I think it's just normal and very, reasonable for a lawmaker to let Nigeria know. We have 3 senators from a state. In some states, for instance, like say Kano State, one senator is representing about 12 local governments. Assuming that senator is earning 8 million, which I want to be that's what they earn in terms of total emoluments, including his salary, his support staff salaries, and some other, earning. Assuming it's earning 8 million, for instance. Considering the nature of our own democracy, considering the nature of the pressure from the various constituency on our politicians, how would that 8 million goes around 12 local governments? When you see politicians, once you are elected or appointed as ministers, as governor, as this and that, or senator, the pressure is on you from your constituents. When your wife gives birth, they call upon you. When you are doing naming, they call upon you. When they are doing funeral, they call upon you. When they are going to school, they call upon you. So when you look at all this, I think it's just normal. To me, it's reasonable for Nigerian legislature, especially National Assembly, to let Nigeria know how much they earn, vis-a-vis the kind of pressure that come onto them from the populace. So I want to subscribe to the opinion that just like we tend to have it in the 8th Assembly, there should be openness and transparency. Let the people know how much our legislature earn, their take home per month, their take home per year, and perhaps the total emolument that goes to them.
And beyond even opening up of the budget of a National Assembly, other demands of the openness, initiative, which is, replacing voice votes with electronic voting, tracked so that Nigerians can track their representatives and make public attendance record at plenary open. And we're still not seeing the National Assembly doing these things, which will also, which will help Nigerians track their lawmakers, know what exactly their lawmakers are doing in parliaments.
Yes. As I said, you see, unlike the executive and judiciary, our lawmaking agencies are, evolving. They're just coming up. Before 8th Assembly, we did not have the kind of subtle openness we had before 8th Assembly. The 9th Assembly was about settling down when we have the COVID-19 upsurge, which to a large extent has hampered a lot of activities. In fact, in terms of us sitting down for them to deliberate on issues that affected it. In the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, especially last year, there was a blueprint, a study that we carried out from our institute, which we submitted as proposal to Net Assembly on how they can do electronic, voting, on how they can do e-trackings of the bills, and even engage the legislature without face-to-face, meeting. And I want to believe that one is being embedded in this budget now, in terms of implementation. Secondly, when you talk about opening of budgets, when you go to this year's budget, unlike what it used to be before, you can see that certain agencies of National Assembly, including National Assembly paraphernalia, has been separated. You can now see, before you used to see National Assembly budgets, something. But now you now see National Assembly, you see the Senate, you see the Rep, you see NAS. So that's the beginning of openness. In terms of, clearly you now see what goes into Rep. Clearly you see what goes into Senate. You see what goes to the Institute. You see what goes to NABRO. I think that's the beginning of openness. But again, we are living in an era of, what to call information, freedom of information, assessment. Nigerians are at liberty to engage the legislature. We are at liberty to engage them on issues. We are at liberty in terms of access to National Assembly to even ask questions on certain things. When the Senator Sonny was engaged on this issue under 8th Assembly, he opened up most of these things. And after opening up most of these issues, I think Nigeria tend to raise the case.
Now, in your study, you spoke about, setting an agenda, expectations, what Nigerians expect from their representatives in the National Assembly. Could you just give us, a collation of some of these things, which Nigerians voiced out in the study?
The most interesting thing about the study, about the outcome of the study, is the fact that most respondents that we ask questions tend to believe that their major expectation from their elected representative is for the Assembly to see to the need of their constituency. And we were a bit taken aback.
So not even lawmaking or oversight?
Yeah. No. The question of law is part of is lawmaking. Yes, essentially some of them have the knowledge about lawmaking. But once majority now say, look, what we expected is they should see to our needs. Our needs in terms of economic needs. Our needs in terms of our social needs. Our needs in terms of our, individual needs. You begin to wonder. Legislatures are not elected perhaps to implement budgets, to implement policy. They are to make law. They are to do oversight. They are to represent their people. So when this thing now came as the expectation from Nigerian people, you begin to wonder, how do you now reconcile the questions of constituency projects, which Nigerians tend to now criticize, and this kind of expectation from Nigerian people?
You're welcome back to the Gavel. We continue with the interview with the Director General of the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, Professor Abubakar Sulaiman.
We discovered that most Nigerians, especially the respondents to this study, most of them believe they don't have access to their lawmakers. That yes, once they are elected, they leave their constituency after election. They go in terms of accessibility, in terms of having access to them, it has been a problem. And they're now saying they must devise a mechanism of engaging with them. If we cannot see them face to face, they must be able to at least link up with us. So communication network or channel of communication is a major problem.
And this is where, we've had some some civil rights advocates saying lawmakers should have functional websites where they put information there. They also load the website with the activities, with their bills which they are sponsoring, motions which they are sponsoring, so that the representatives can understand what it is they're doing in Parliament.
Yes, it's a development. I think it's one of the improvements you can make. But again, most of Nigerian constituents, they are not literate as such.
So what of town hall meetings in addition to
They are not literate. And for the town hall meeting, I think most of them do go, or some of them do go to their constituency to interact with them. But the major point here is, which is a problem anyway to any politicians, people believe when you go from time to time, people don't want to hear the jargon you're going to speak. They don't want to hear the story. They don't want to hear, what they hear is that let him leave and give us money. So when you look at the contours of pressure and demands on the politicians, on the legislature, that perhaps inform why a lot of them tend to stay back and say, let me just make law, let me see what I can do, let me reach out to the few of them, and yes, that is not helping matter. That is not what democracy entails.
So more or less, this is a systemic
issue. It's a systemic problem which we need to handle. As I said, coming from the executive and knowing more about the legislature now, I think it's an holistic, value revisiting that we need to do. Not just about talking about the legislature or about the politicians. Even the followers, the electorate, the people that elected them into government need to be talked to in terms of what is their needs, what should be your value system, what do you see as the main thing why you elected these people there? Is it just to go and give you money, or to serve you by bringing infrastructure to your community? I think these are essential things we need to look at.
The National Assembly is constitutionally backed to oversight the other arms of government. However, some have asked who oversights the National Assembly to ensure probity and accountability in the use of resources and efficiency of its actions. We have a chat on this matter with the former senator who represented Kaduna Central in the 8th Assembly, Senator Shehu Sani.
Well, you see the organogram of the democracy and government has created the National Assembly in its unique form to perform its oversight function on all other agencies of government, but has not created any agency to oversight the activities of the National Assembly. So, what is expected of the public was that, particularly the organized civil society, to monitor projects and nominations being made by senators and members of House of Reps and lawmakers generally on how they want to spend those funds. And we have some civil society organizations like the Budget IT, the Tracker, and they have been doing a good job. When I was a lawmaker and up to today, what they do is that they go to the office and then collect the list of what you as a lawmaker declared that you want nominated, that you want to do in your constituency, and then they track it. A number of occasions, the civil society groups do go around to see, if you say you're going to build a hospital, they go and see whether you have built it, they want to build a school, you want to build roads and do whatever. It's possible. They go around to see whether you do it and they report it on their official website. But the innovation to that was the intervention by the ICPC, which is very good. On a number of occasions, the ICPC has gone around the country. In my own constituency, they came to my constituency office. I have been out of the Senate almost 1.5 years now, but they are still moving around. Even former senators, former rep members, go around to audit what we have done. If you said you are going to share 100 motorcycles, they can demand to speak to those 100 people that you share those motorcycles to. If you say you are sharing buses or grinding machines or dryers, they will demand to see physically those people who were beneficiaries of what you did. In the 4 years that I served, I built 7 primary healthcare centers through the National Primary Healthcare Development Agencies, and they were all well equipped. So the ICPC came and went round and saw those equipments and those hospitals that were built, and to a certain level they were pleased. And I believe that those movements are important, but what is most important is that the citizens themselves should be able to do it. You should go around. And if you leave it to civil society organizations, they move around only when they have the resources to do that. And a number of times also, some of the civil groups told me that they at times encounter hostile reaction from the lawmakers and their supporters, that some of them felt threatened whenever they go to monitor those projects. So I believe that it is easier to monitor constructions, schools, hospitals, than for you to monitor empowerment materials, which is about 1,000, 2,000 people that you cannot all bring them to say, I want to confirm whether you have been given all these things here. And I think that is also one of the challenges that you're going to, the ICPC is facing. Because if you put in 360 members of House of Reps from 109 senators, and for an ICPC as limited as its resources are, as limited as its manpowers is, for it to go around 774 local governments, 36 states from FCT Abuja, then they will have no job to do other than to move around. So actually, there may be need to set up an agency that will monitor, specifically monitor the activities and the projects, the zonal interventions, because if you don't have that, ICPC's job is to fight corruption, prosecute cases of corruption, and when you put them in the task of monitoring projects, they have a lot of things, a way to do, because if they have 10 staffs, I mean, in one state, they cannot go around and properly and adequately monitor the projects that was done. And some projects are continuous, so you have to go 3 to 4 times. So what is the budget of ICPC?
But will this agency which you speak of, will it not bring about a clash of responsibilities and duties between it and other organizations, with other agencies, statutorily mandated to perform these duties?
The point is that we are all talking about the transparency of the process and also value for money, and also the ease to which projects can actually be monitored. And the process as it is today, oversight function of National Assembly is left for the civil society and the ICPC to do. And that is a big problem. If civil society don't have funding to go to nook and crannies. There are some places in Nigeria today, civil society cannot go to some villages in Borno, in Zamfara, in Yobe State. And they depend on donor funding for them to go to those places. So if donors refuse to give them money, and no legislature will give you money to go and monitor his project.
Now, this is where we call it a day on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us, and see you again next week.